Hello and welcome to Prepspot. In this video we are going to know about one of the most talked about legislative developments in recent times, the WAQF Amendment Bill 2025 and the ensuing protests and legal challenges that have captivated the nation. In today's discussion, I will provide you with a comprehensive overview of the bill, its historical context, key changes, controversies, and the responses from various political and community leaders, so that by the end of our session you will have a clear and thorough understanding of the events that have unfolded since the bill's passage in Parliament. On 2nd April 2025, the Lok Sabha passed the WAQF Amendment Bill with 288 votes in favour and 232 against, and this was followed by the Rajya Sabha's approval on 3rd April 2025 with 128 votes for and 95 against, leaving the legislation to await the assent of President Draupadi Murmu. This bill, aimed at reforming the management of WAQF properties, a term that refers to properties dedicated permanently for pious, religious, or charitable purposes under Islamic law, has been introduced against a backdrop of long-standing concerns regarding transparency, mismanagement, and encroachment, issues that have plagued the administration of these assets for decades. Managed by state-level WAQF boards under the framework of the WAQF Act, 1995, these properties are integral to Indian Muslim communities and include mosques, madrasas, hospitals, and other charitable institutions, all of which have been the subject of both historical reverence and modern administrative challenges. The origins of the bill trace back to persistent calls for reform from within the communities themselves, as well as from broader governance debates that have their roots in earlier WAQF laws dating from 1913, 1923, and 1954, which were eventually superseded by the WAQF Act of 1995. The government's current proposal builds upon these earlier efforts, aiming to address issues such as lack of transparency and accountability in the administration of WAQF properties, while also seeking to curb practices that have led to significant encroachments on assets that are meant to serve community and religious purposes. The reforms proposed in the bill include measures such as the digitalization of records and enhanced auditing protocols to ensure that the management of these properties is conducted in a transparent and efficient manner. One of the more controversial provisions of the bill, however, involves the restriction that WAQF properties can only be created by individuals who have practiced Islam for a minimum of 5 years, a clause that many critics argue is discriminatory and could potentially marginalize segments of the community who might not meet this arbitrary criterion. As soon as news of the bill's passage emerged, protests erupted in major cities across India, including Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Chennai, and Delhi. These demonstrations have seen the active participation of students, community leaders, and prominent political figures, all of whom have expressed deep concerns regarding the potential impact of the legislation on minority rights and religious freedoms. The opposition, led prominently by the Congress party and supported by other political entities such as the DMK and SP, has not only taken to the streets but has also escalated the matter legally by filing pleas in the Supreme Court. These legal challenges primarily contest the bill on constitutional grounds, with critics arguing that its provisions infringe upon Article 25, which guarantees the freedom of religion, as well as Article 14, which ensures equality before the law. Opposition leaders have been vocal in their criticism, with figures such as Mallikarjun Kharge, Rahul Gandhi, and others arguing that the bill represents an attack on the very fabric of minority rights in India. In defending the legislation, government representatives, including Union Home Minister Amit Shah and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, have insisted that the bill is a necessary step towards safeguarding the heritage of WAQF properties and ensuring that they are managed in a manner that is both transparent and accountable. They argue that the reforms are essential for curbing historical issues of mismanagement and for preventing the encroachment that has often compromised the intended charitable and religious purposes of these properties. The government maintains that the enhanced digitalization and auditing measures will not only streamline administrative processes but also empower the WAQF boards by making their operations more accessible and subject to regular scrutiny. Moreover, proponents of the bill assert that the proposed changes in the composition of WAQF boards are intended to promote inclusivity and to reflect the contemporary needs of the communities they serve, although critics contend that these changes could inadvertently reduce the autonomy of these boards and pave the way for political interference in matters that have traditionally been handled by community insiders. The controversy surrounding the WAQF Amendment Bill is multifaceted and deeply rooted in both legal and cultural dimensions. On the legal front, the challenge centers on the claim that certain provisions of the bill, particularly those that impose restrictions on who may create WAQF properties, could violate constitutional guarantees. Critics argue that by tying the eligibility for WAQF creation to a 5-year period of practicing Islam, the government is effectively creating a discriminatory barrier that undermines the principle of religious freedom. This point of contention has not only fueled public protests but has also led to a series of legal challenges that are now being heard in the Supreme Court. These legal proceedings are expected to examine whether the bill's measures are in line with the principles enshrined in the Indian Constitution, particularly in relation to the rights of minorities and the equal protection of all citizens under the law. Culturally, WAQF properties hold significant importance as they serve as the backbone of various religious and social services within Muslim communities. They are often seen as symbols of communal identity and historical legacy, with many of these properties having been established generations ago to serve educational, healthcare, and social welfare functions. The reform of such a vital institution naturally evokes strong emotions and a deep sense of historical continuity among community members, which explains the passionate reactions observed in cities like Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Chennai, and Delhi. Community leaders, including those associated with organizations such as the All India Muslim Personal Law Board, have been at the forefront of the protests, arguing that any attempt to reform or alter the traditional management of WAQF properties must be approached with utmost sensitivity and in full consultation with the stakeholders involved. The significance of the WAQF Amendment Bill extends beyond the immediate administrative changes it proposes. It also touches upon broader issues of governance, accountability, and minority rights. In many ways, this legislation has become a litmus test for how modern India negotiates the balance between reform and tradition. On one hand, there is a pressing need to update and modernize the systems that have long governed the management of WAQF properties, especially in light of the challenges posed by rapid urbanization and changing socio-economic landscapes. On the other hand, there is a legitimate concern that in the process of reform, the government may overstep its mandate and inadvertently curtail the rights of the communities that these properties are meant to serve. This delicate balancing act is at the heart of the debate, and it is why the bill has sparked such intense debate both in the public sphere and within the corridors of power. The legislative journey of the WAQF Amendment Bill 2025 was marked by extensive debates and discussions in Parliament, which extended well into the night following nearly 12 hours of rigorous deliberation. The urgency with which the bill was pushed through has been cited by government officials as evidence of its critical importance, yet this very haste has been one of the major points of criticism from the opposition, who argue that such a rushed process does not allow for adequate scrutiny of the bill's implications. The decision to fast-track the bill's passage, according to its detractors, suggests that political expediency may have taken precedence over a thorough and transparent legislative process. This aspect of the bill's passage has added fuel to the protests, as citizens and community leaders alike have expressed concerns that the rapid pace of the legislative process has not afforded them the opportunity to engage meaningfully with the content and implications of the proposed reforms. From an administrative perspective, one of the key objectives of the bill is to bring about greater transparency and accountability in the management of WAQF properties. This is to be achieved through the digitization of records and the implementation of more robust auditing systems, measures that are intended to address long-standing issues of mismanagement and corruption. The government argues that by modernizing the administrative framework governing WAQF properties, it will be possible to not only prevent the misappropriation of funds and resources but also to ensure that the true purpose of these properties, namely, to serve charitable and religious causes, is preserved and enhanced. However, while these measures have been lauded by some as necessary reforms, others remain skeptical, contending that the digitalization of records may inadvertently expose sensitive information and lead to unintended consequences, particularly in the hands of those who might seek to exploit the new system for political gain. The legal challenges that have been mounted against the bill are an essential part of this unfolding drama. The Congress Party, along with other opposition groups, has filed petitions in the Supreme Court, arguing that several of the bill's provisions are unconstitutional. These legal actions, which have already seen significant media coverage, are expected to scrutinize the bill in light of constitutional guarantees related to the freedom of religion and equality before the law. The petitions argue that by imposing restrictions on WAQF creation and altering the composition of WAQF boards, the bill could undermine the autonomy of these institutions and disproportionately affect minority communities. It is within this legal framework that the future of the WAQF Amendment Bill will likely be determined, as the Supreme Court's interpretation of its constitutional validity will have far-reaching implications not only for WAQF properties but also for the broader discourse on minority rights and state intervention in religious affairs. As we examine the responses from various stakeholders, it is clear that there is a stark division between the government's position and that of the opposition. On the government side, officials have maintained that the bill is a much-needed intervention aimed at preserving the integrity of WAQF properties, preventing further encroachment, and ensuring that these assets are managed in a manner that is both transparent and accountable. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in particular, has described the bill as a watershed moment for the management of Muslim land and heritage, emphasizing that the reforms are designed to bring about a more modern and efficient administrative system that can better serve the needs of the community. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has similarly defended the legislation, arguing that the changes are necessary to address the systemic issues that have long plagued the WAQF system. On the other hand, opposition leaders from the Congress Party and allied groups have been unequivocal in their criticism, claiming that the bill is an attempt to undermine minority rights and to polarize communities along religious lines. Prominent figures such as Mallikarjun Kharge, Rahul Gandhi, and other leaders have voiced strong objections, asserting that the bill not only represents an overreach of state power but also sets a dangerous precedent for future legislative interventions in matters of religious and cultural significance. It is also important to understand the historical and cultural context that underpins this debate. WAQF properties have historically been more than just administrative assets. They are repositories of cultural heritage and communal identity, often embodying centuries-old traditions and serving as centers for education, healthcare, and social welfare. The reform of such a deeply entrenched institution naturally invites passionate responses from those who feel that their heritage and identity are at stake. In this context, the bill is seen by many as not merely an administrative reform but as a potential redefinition of the relationship between the state and minority communities, a move that could have lasting repercussions on how religious freedoms are understood and protected in India. For students preparing for competitive exams, this episode provides a rich case study in the interplay between legislative reform, constitutional law, and minority rights. It encapsulates the challenges of balancing modern administrative needs with the preservation of historical and cultural legacies, and it highlights the critical role that the judiciary plays in adjudicating disputes that have both legal and socio-political dimensions. Moreover, the protest movements that have arisen in response to the bill are themselves significant from a democratic perspective. They reflect the vibrancy and dynamism of civil society in India, as citizens from diverse backgrounds come together to voice their concerns and demand that their rights be protected. Whether it is through marches, sit-ins, or public rallies, these protests underscore the fact that legislative reforms, no matter how well-intentioned, must be subjected to rigorous public debate and scrutiny. They also serve as a reminder that answer this question in comments. The correct answer will be given hot and pinned. Lastly, we just want to let you know that we are a newly emerging online platform for competitive exams. Creating educational explainer videos like these requires a lot of effort, money, and time. If you like these videos and want us to excel and create videos in all categories of competitive exams, then you can consider supporting us with a one-time donation through the WAQF platform and also by becoming a member through Patreon. This will help us create more such informative educational videos in the competitive exams space. So, one last time, subscribe and share this channel with all your friends who are preparing for competitive exams. And also, follow us on social media platforms. The links are given in the About section of the channel and also in the video description. So, see you in the next video.